Gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Vital Masculinity Podcast. This week, we have a special treat for you. In fact, we have a special treat for the next 2 weeks. We are taking a break from our series on the 4 cardinal virtues to cover a couple of different, although related topics. This week, we're talking about the problem with nice guys. Are they too nice? Are they not nice enough? What's the deal? And what does it look like to be a virtuous man? We'll cover all that and more in this week's episode. If this is something that interests you, or if you'd like to provide some feedback, or just talk about vital masculinity, we'd love to have you join us on our Facebook group, which you can find at facebook.com/groups/vital masculinity. Stephen and I have been excited to see over the past few weeks that we've had a number of international listeners from places like Russia, Israel, Austria, Georgia, the country, Norway, Australia, Canada, Malaysia, the UK, Brazil, Argentina, plus all over the United States. If that's you, we'd love to have you join our discussion group. That would be very nice.
Gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome to the Vital Masculinity Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Sloyer, and I'm here for conversation, as always, with my co-host, Brian Murphy. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty nice.
Yeah, this is a special episode. This isn't a scripted episode in a certain sense. This is conversational. We're kicking back. I got some flavored carbonated mineral water here. You can hear that, that nice can opening. So today we're going to have a conversation, and this is just going to be a very casual conversation about the phenomenon of nice guys. And Brian, would you like to go into what a nice guy is?
Oh boy, I think there's a lot of ways you can look at it, but I think essentially a nice guy is someone who, they act really nice to you because, and then they expect, to get something out of you, like, oh well, I've been really nice to you, so you owe me.
Absolutely. So if you guys want to get stuck in rabbit holes, there's a subreddit called Nice Guys. And a good example just from 14 hours ago on the day we recorded this is a nice short little blurb. So here it is. I got married on a weekday and my BFF bridesmaid had to leave early for work the next day. My 92-year-old grandpa offered her a drink and she said no. And he told my dad she's a bitch. So that's a nice guy. I don't exactly know what was going on there. No, right? But it's that idea, really, that I do X and I get Y. And the reason why we're recording this episode now is because this kind of serves as almost a bonus conversation on justice. This is a good, relaxing, nothing too serious, which is why I'm kicking back and drinking carbonated water, but I think it fits in really well with the idea of justice. And a lot of the things we talked about, misconceptions of justice, particularly the idea that we do not act justly. In this case, we don't act nicely, we don't act kindly to get something.
Right. Yeah, because if you think about the definition, justice is getting your due, and this is kind of almost the opposite of justice, because you're saying, well, I was nice to you, so you owe me this. But in reality, people don't owe you something for being nice. If you want to be nice, okay, fine, be nice. But be nice because you want to be nice to them and do something nice for them. But don't do it because you're expecting something from them. Because in reality, that's not nice.
Now look, guys, a lot of you out there may be nice guys. I think at some point, all of us, including myself, maybe you too, Brian, have kind of undergone this phase. It seems to be a really peculiar phenomenon in the West, particularly in America, where a lot of young men are raised with this kind of tit-for-tat notion. And in many ways, when I say tit, I literally mean tit, because a lot of this relates to sex. But I think more generally it relates to this phenomenon that we, in many ways, do the bare minimum just to get the reward. My future father-in-law loves to complain. He works in a garage, but he loves to complain about people that come in working for him and do the absolute bare minimum and then complain and whine and moan and bitch when they don't get a promotion. And that's exactly this phenomenon. Yeah, you can do the bare minimum. You can do X, Y, or Z, and then you're whining and complaining when you don't get a result. That shows that particular action shows exactly who you are. And at Vital Masculinity, we're here to not breed that kind of character. Because again, it's not just about actions. It's about who you are in totality, your character, your person, and, your habits that you're developing.
In many ways, this whole idea of, I deserve this, I'm going to put in the bare minimum, or I'm expecting great things out of a little bit of effort. This kind of ties into this concept of, when people complain about millennials, and we're both of us are millennials. I think maybe some of our listeners.
Oh yeah, I am, man. I think I may be Gen Z, but.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, the same idea. But if you look at, a lot of the ways that we've grown up in kind of this affluent culture, I didn't come from a very rich family, but we had plenty of stuff, and so you tend to get spoiled because you get lots of presents for Christmas. You don't really have to wait for anything. You can get whatever you want, and that kind of builds up this mindset of like, I deserve things when I want things, and that's not really how the real world works, and that's not how a man acts.
Absolutely. I think we've probably said we should keep a counter, man. We really should. About how many times we tell you guys not to whine and complain and moan and stuff. Because that's just the most unmanly thing. Are you going to come home and whine and complain and moan to your wife? I mean, yeah, venting is one thing, but just telling her, how your boss is a bitch or whatever it could be, like, just think about that image. Does that seem manly to you? If so, then we may need to have some conversations. I would recommend joining our mentorship program on the Facebook group, facebook.com/group/vital masculinity. A little bit of a plug there. And we'll be glad to work with you to kind of break you of that. But the world doesn't need this. The world doesn't need more noise. Our communities don't need more just, ceaseless chatter about what's wrong with the world and why X person's mean. And, kind of thinking about this entire nice guy phenomenon, Brian, I think there's danger in the flip side as well, because I think a lot of people think the opposite of nice is mean. And actually, I would say that's true. The opposite of nice is being mean. But when we're saying don't be a nice guy, it also means you're not supposed to be a dick and expect to get, things, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I grew up being a nice guy.
Same here.
I was terrified of talking to women. I think my first date was when I was 19, and my friend basically set me up with this girl that he knew she liked me, but I was still too afraid to ask her out. And so he kind of like forced us to go on a date with him and his girlfriend. And then you won't believe this, but so we go. I think we went to some movie, and he literally takes my arm and puts it around this girl.
Oh my gosh.
But I was like too nice to be like, oh well, what if she doesn't like it? I don't want to hurt her feelings or something.
No, dude, I'm there. I'll share a story too. Because a lot of this is just gonna build camaraderie with you guys to show that we're in the same boat and we're all in this journey together. When I was in high school, man, I think my first girlfriend I was a sophomore in high school. And I'll use girlfriend. Brian, you can see the air quotes I'm doing. We should get video at some point. But it was basically a text relationship where, like, I think I asked her out on text, and we had maybe 2 classes together, and we talked beforehand. And like the second that we, we started actually dating, quote unquote, we really stopped seeing each other. And I remember a buddy of mine, two buddies of mine, doing the same thing from band. And they grabbed me during lunchtime because I would eat with them and I wouldn't eat with my girlfriend. And they literally dragged me over and like put me by where she was and plopped me in a seat. And they're like, here's your knight in rusty armor. I'm engaged now, just an FYI. So if that was you at some point, you can, only in 6 short years by listening to Vital Masculinity, you can join that too. But seriously.
Yeah, I mean, that brings back memories for me. I mean, I had lots of struggles with getting to know women and dating, and I've had I think a couple girlfriends. I have a girlfriend right now. And so I've had a lot more success recently, but just growing up, like, it was very frustrating. I was a pretty shy guy, and but I would always see, like, other people I knew were dating people, and I remember my mom and my aunts and different women, because women like to set people up, and they were like, "Oh, Brian, you're so handsome. You're you're a really nice guy. Like, when are you gonna meet a girlfriend and have a girlfriend? Like, you really deserve a good girlfriend." And I'm just so surprised that you're not. And so I mean, I appreciate those sentiments, and I think they came from a good place, but they kind of built up in me this idea of, like, yeah, I deserve a girlfriend. Like, I'm a nice guy. I think I'm decently attractive, and why girls just must like jerks if they don't like me, because I deserve this because I've been doing all the right things, except for talking to girls.
I think you said. I think you said, 3 times that deserve word, which is a very dangerous word for anybody, most particularly boys. I mean, this episode really isn't designed to provide a lot of solutions for this. I think this is really just kind of chewing the cud on a lot of these topics. But this is a really serious phenomenon, and a lot of guys fall into it for a lot of reasons. I think there's a great book out there called. Oh my gosh, I think it's The Boy Crisis by John Warren and John Gray. I'm finishing it up now. It's a very long book, and I don't agree with all the premises, but it does cover a good host for, why there's problems with boys. We'll put a link in the show notes for those that are interested. But, yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, there's the issues with pornography, there's the issues with fatherlessness, there's the issues with fathers that are there, that are absent, that don't treat boys the right way. I think there's an issues with, the way boys are raised by their peers in a certain sense. Well, not even in a certain sense. I think, excuse me, this carbonated water is getting to me. Boys, if you're in public school or private school even, you really are raised by your peers and the peer group that they're surrounded by. And a lot of the peer group gets their notion of what it means to be a man from television. And we all know that a lot of television is just crap today. I'd say, if not everything, 98, 99%. And that's a really damaging thing, because you have a lot of people growing up. Excuse me again. We may cut those out, but maybe not. You have a lot of people growing up that are trying to emulate, reality TV shows or fake TV. They're trying to emulate acting, and that's not real life. And that produces a real gap between what men and boys are and what they have historically been, at certain ages and so on.
I mean, you think about just all the movies, TV shows, all the sorts of media where it's... If you're learning how to be a man from your friends, from movies, from TV, and I think a lot of us are, because I hate to say it, but and I'm sure there's plenty of good fathers out there, and I've learned things from my fathers in different ways, and I think he's a pretty good man. But I don't know what it is, but it seems like a lot of the men have dropped the ball in different ways, and we have been left to figure this out for ourselves. And so when you're a teenager and you got all these raging hormones and you're trying to figure out what the right thing to do, well, you look at what everyone else is doing, and that's... Like, I'm watching this guy on TV and I want a girlfriend. Oh, look, he has no problem getting girlfriends, so I should just act just like him. But it's a fiction for a reason, because that's not usually what you see on TV is not how it works.
Another word you use that's great is acting, which is basically what nice guys are doing, because at the end of the day, nice guys are not nice. There's no way around that fact, which is proven that when they don't get what they want, like the 92-year-old grandpa at the story, they lash out. In anger, which is not a just thing to do, as we talked about in our episodes on justice. And that's really an issue, because, a lot of people can kind of characterize life as putting on different series of masks, and I disagree with that. I think there's an issue, kind of like Ryan Mickler has with the word authentic. That's a weird, concept as well, but I think this idea that we put on different masks is incorrect. But so many people do. So many people lie about who they are by acting, and just copying what they see other people do, and that's a problem because, again, where they're learning it is from people that don't have their best interests in mind, people that are just playing around. And, this is why I think we've seen the world get a lot less serious in the past couple of years. If that does that make sense, Brian, what I'm saying about the world getting less serious?
No. What exactly do you mean by that?
So I think, and it could be just the concept of like memes, but actually I think even more particular would be sarcasm, is I think that sarcasm has really increased in the past few years. And maybe not few years, but few decades. And a lot of this is because people don't know how to be assertive. People are, trying to be passive aggressive, which in many ways that's what sarcasm is. And passive aggressive is just acting. And that's really, the nice guy on that quadrant of passive aggressive, and assertive. That's the quadrant where nice guys continually are.
I think a lot of that ties into like social media with Facebook, Twitter, or whatever it is, Snapchat. You're posting things out there, but they're basically permanent, but you're just throwing whatever ideas you have out there. And a lot of it's just like complaining and whining about things and maybe even trying to trigger people or whatever it might be. And a lot of it doesn't help you to grow as being a man. And I think we both can speak from experience because like these examples that we're using are things that I have struggled with myself. And that's kind of the reason that we've created this podcast, is because it took us a lot of failing and struggling and trying to figure out what the right thing is to do and how to be a man. And so while maybe this episode isn't specifically focusing on addressing like how to not be a nice guy, that's kind of what our whole podcast is about. If you're growing in virtue, if you're being virtuous, you're not going to be this quote unquote nice guy that we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else we can even talk about on this subject. I just finished my carbonated water.
Yeah, so maybe we can talk a little bit about. So when you think about the nice guy, he says, he acts nice, but he's really expecting, he's expecting things from it. So that's not really nice. But eventually he realizes that doesn't work. So. Is this something that you kind of came to a realization in your life that, being a nice guy isn't going to work for me? And how did you kind of react to that? What path did that lead you down when you came to this realization?
So this opens up a Pandora's box in many ways because I didn't realize, like, it wasn't the series of failures with women that made me realize that being a nice guy isn't the way to go for, pursuing women, or really just life in general, that concept of passive aggressiveness. It was actually reinforcing, I think, my habits in a certain sense. And I think that, the more and more, and you see this with a lot of nice guys, that the more and more that you act like a nice guy, the more and more you become a nice guy because you think you just weren't nice enough. And you think you just didn't say the right thing, or you weren't, as fedora tipping or chivalrous as you supposedly could have been. And that's an issue. And for me, the way I got out of it, and this is a way I don't exactly recommend, but it was the way for me, was kind of discovering the whole red pill game, PUA, pickup artist concept.
That's exactly what I came across.
Right. And that's a whole another conversation, and I know we'll end up talking about that because that's a really big sphere. And there's a lot of good, and there's also a lot of bad out of it. But for me, I didn't spend too much time in it, but I think what it did is it kind of broke the illusion that in order for me to not just, win over women's hearts, but also to just kind of get what I want in life, that I need to be more assertive, that I need to be more direct, and that I need to, not lie and really expect that I deserve things. A great great book on this that I know you've read, Brian. Is called No Mr. Nice Guy. And oh my gosh, I cannot
Yeah.
remember the author's name off the top of my head. And it's I think it's like 4 to 5 stars. There's a couple of things in there I disagree with, but I think if you're a nice guy, then I would definitely recommend picking up that book, today and starting to read it, because I think it'll open your eyes greatly.
That's interesting that that's the path that you went. And I can see what you're saying. That makes sense. I think for me, I kind of got to the point where I was like, well, I deserve this, but I'm not getting what I want. And so I got kind of angry. And that's kind of what led me to the red pill, because it was like, oh, okay, these women, they're being, manipulative, and okay, so I got to kind of do the same thing and get what I want out of them, because they're not going to play my game, so I need to play the game. And I mean, to some extent, it kind of works, but at the same time, like, you end up at least me, I was like, I kind of hate myself for doing this, because deep down, I wanted to be a nice person, and I'm acting like a jerk just to get results. And so even though I'm getting results in some ways, it's not really working the way that I want to, and I'm not really meeting the type of women that I want to meet by being this jerk.
That's a classic definition of injustice, in the way that you're getting the results by treating other people as means to an end. And this is a tough scenario to be in, because I think a lot of people kind of get trapped in that pickup artist, that game world. And first of all, they're not meeting quality women at all. I mean, I know that I would not be meeting Jessica, and I know you wouldn't be meeting Olivia if you were, following all those moves, or, God forbid, like meeting them in bars and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because so I met my girlfriend on a dating website, catholicmatch.com, and I had some pictures throughout the years posted up there, and we hit it off, and we're dating. But it's funny, she mentioned it later. She was like, yeah, there were some pictures on there where I was like, I don't like this guy. Like, whoever you were in these pictures, this is not someone that I would want to date. Like, I think I wouldn't have liked you when in this time period. So it's kind of funny that even though it's just a picture, she could tell, like, I was kind of a jerk at that time period, and not someone that would be really fun to be around. But so yeah, I mean, if you're, there's two problems here. You have the nice guy, and then you have kind of the reaction to the nice guy, which is like, okay, I need to kind of go in the opposite direction and be a jerk, because, I've been a nice guy for so long, and, well, women don't seem to like nice guys, but they like jerks, apparently, because they don't like nice guys, so I'm going to be a jerk, and I'm get women to like me. But, it doesn't work out. And so the real solution here is to say, okay, I want to be a virtuous guy, because I want to meet virtuous women that are actually worth dating and potentially worth marrying.
I think that's a great middle ground. I mean, I feel like every episode I talk about the middle ground, in this instance being between being a passive aggressive nice guy, and then in the other instance being an aggressive jerk. And in this case, we're talking about being assertive, but also not, I'll say, compromising your values. And really, I guess in the first place, having these values. Because as we talk about vital masculinity, building virtue is important, and really at the end of the day, it's the first step. A lot of places, whether it's the pickup artist and game community, or as well as some other like men's magazines, website, maybe not a men's magazine, that has other connotations, but men's websites and podcasts and things like that, they kind of start off with saying, hey, you're struggling getting a girlfriend, here's how you get a girlfriend. And I don't think that's the right place to start. I think if, sometimes that could be the only issue, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of the issues just deep down. And this is why we talk about starting with virtue. And this is why we talk about building yourself up and then building your brotherhood up and really having this foundation down. And then you can go on and do a lot of these ancillary things, or in conjunction with growing in virtue, you can do these ancillary things. And I think you'll see amazing results with that.
That's so true. If you're not the man that you want to be, you're not going to meet the girl that you want to meet.
Oof.
So you kind of have to work on yourself first.
Right, that's a good title for this episode. But anyway, I think this has been a pretty good casual conversation about nice guy syndrome and sharing some personal details and things like that. So I think we'll wrap it up now. A good 25 minutes in or so. No daily deeds because this is just a casual conversation over at the Vital Masculinity Podcast. But we really appreciate you listening. We would love to hear your stories if you're so inclined to share them over at our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Vital Masculinity. You can check out some of the show notes for some of the resources we mentioned, like some of the books like Mr. Nice Guy, The Boy Crisis by John Warren and John Gray. And, feel free to connect with us if you have any other questions or have any other topics you'd like us to talk about, particularly in the context of virtue and brotherhood and building up communities.